For those joining online, this is the Affordable Housing Committee meeting of Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. We're meeting in the Old Town Hall Conference Room as well as via Zoom. With that, I think we do have a quorum. We have everyone here, so turn things over to you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Great to see everybody, and happy to have Tom Phillips, ADU advocate.
Yeah.
Was joined us last time with us. Tom, welcome again.
Thank you.
Anytime. So we have some interesting things to talk about tonight. No visitors this evening, so we'll jump right to the middle of things. Yes, first item will be to approve the minutes of the May 8th meeting.
I would make a motion, second, and then discussion, right? That's how it goes.
Yes.
So I'll move.
I'll second. Good.
Okay, any discussion?
No.
All in favor, then?
Steve's
I'm
got
looking here,
I
I'm
think
looking
Steve's
here.
got some comments. It's wondering your substitute.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Come on. Wow, Steve.
I'm in favor.
Make him honorary secretary.
No, that would be torture.
Second.
Okay, so all in favor? Okay, approved, great. Next item, this is a follow-up to our meeting. Actually, these three items coming up, number 4, 5, and 6 on the agenda, are all follow-ups from our meeting on May 8th. And the first one is the text amendment that John Fallon presented at our meeting on May 8th. And this was the one that would enable, it's a proposed amendment that would for a 15,000 square foot lot effectively enable a developer to build 5 units, one of which would need to be affordable.
So this, we've been working with purchaser and developer of 68 Royal Avenue. As Chair mentioned, the site is within the Residence B zone. It's very near the Residence C zone. It's 15,000 square foot. It's dry. You could, per our existing zoning regulations, divide it into 2 lots and build a conforming duplex as well as a single family within that 15,000 square foot envelope. The conversation we had with the developer, it seems like there might be an opportunity to potentially do more, given high costs of land and limited opportunities. And so the text amendment, to do exactly as you described, would enable the developer to create 5 units. 1 would be affordable, and then would have the ability to create a bonus unit as well. So a total of 5 units, 1 of which would be affordable to persons or households with incomes at or below 80% AMI. And I think we've discussed it with staff at Planning and Zoning, bringing it to this board for your consideration and review. I think the applicant, Attorney Fallon, and his client would greatly appreciate your support. With that, they would plan to make an application to Planning and Zoning shortly. So that's happy to answer any questions.
Cool. So I went over and looked at the site, and I thought it's sort of in a tucked away little neighborhood, and that if they did anything there, I don't think it would affect much. And in this particular application, I thought it was fine, but I'm wondering how it might affect other B districts.
Yeah, so we did do an analysis looking at lots of 15,000 square feet or more within the Residence B zone. There are roughly 60 or 65 parcels, I guess.
I came up with 75.
75, okay. That meet that criteria. Many of which probably wouldn't pass, there's other limitations in terms of development, whether or not they have the required street frontage lot square. Some have wetlands, some are difficult from a topography standpoint. So that number would be greatly reduced. I don't know, Bob, if you did further analysis to get that number to.
Well, I got it down to 49, when I eliminated those that were in flood zones.
Yeah.
But now, did you get anything back from Erin? You had,
Not yet.
okay,
Not
she
yet.
was also looking at it, so I didn't do anything.
I have looked,
So we have an intern that started working with planning and zoning, who's a GIS specialist, and we asked her, rather than us, Bob, doing a parcel by parcel analysis to determine whether or not it had the required lot square and street frontage and other criteria, we thought it might be more effective if we can do that analysis using modern technology. But we do need to have somebody with GIS capabilities to do that. So she had a long laundry list of projects that she was working on for planning and zoning first, so we're in second position. But I would expect to have that by the time planning and zoning might consider something. But I think it's safe to say that of the 49 that aren't wet, that aren't in a flood
This
zone.
looks like it is, though. I'm looking at it in GIS, and it says it is in flood zone.
No, it's not. It's not. We double check.
The one around the corner is.
It is the only
Right.
dry parcel in that particular area.
Bob, I'm curious, have you tried AI? Could you ask AI to give you the list of all of the lots in town that met these criteria?
I could do it right now.
I have done a look, if AI works for you, doing that, let me know, because I have had, I get some information, but nothing to that level of detail. But I have taken Bob's list and looked at, and many of these lots are narrow lots.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
60 feet by, yeah, 60.
Very irregular.
50s.
Yes.
A lot of them are very irregular. I would, and I made pencil notes, but I didn't aggregate them, but it looks to me like a majority of the lots would not.
Well, the lot
Would
square.
definitely not
they wouldn't
work.
meet the lot square. Yeah, right. This one does apparently, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think to sum it up, the universe of potential candidates of 15,000 square feet or more in Residence B that would actually to be developable to some extent under these regs, this proposed text amendment is a fairly small number.
And do you think that getting it deeded affordable for 40 years is long enough? I mean, why not in perpetuity?
Oh, I'd love that, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's always practicable, but
This is a negotiation, right? They asked 40, we could say 60 years. Yeah.
So ChatGPT just told me how to do it myself.
Yeah.
There you go. So much.
So helpful.
So much credit. I'll get my own.
Yeah, I can get that done.
Language parsing's not gonna give you a search.
They're pretty smart. They're laying off the work on you.
I don't
Teach them
want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think, getting any kind of restriction in terms of affordability is helpful. Obviously, the longer term would be more helpful. Typically we don't see that in perpetuity unless it's, under land trust of the town or some other entity that has a similar mission, like a nonprofit housing provider. So we do want them at the end of the day. I'm sure that they do factor, 40 years is a long time, so whatever financing they're putting in place is
Long gone by then.
long gone by then. So, it's not, we can structure in terms of our suggestions to the committee. I think I'd like to suggest that we're supportive of the overall concept. At some point, I do think that even though our analysis shows that this only applies to a small percentage or handful of lots, this model could be utilized for lots that are smaller than 15,000 square feet. And maybe you don't get 5, maybe you get 4, but I think the model is a good one that we should look at, because the issue that we have, especially if we're trying to create middle housing, it's very difficult to do that given land costs. You just can't make stuff affordable enough without a lot of public monies in the deal, which again, as stewards of the public trust, whether that makes sense to invest such significant dollars in, one or two parcels. So we'll get to that, philosophical debate later, I'm sure.
Yeah, the majority of these lots, as we're saying, are quite, have narrow frontage.
Yes.
So even if they qualified with a 60-foot square, the only way you could configure these would be to have them, not facing the street, but to be,
Oh, side,
configured sort of the way a Beacon Square is.
Well, typically, if you don't have 60 feet square, you're not gonna have 60 feet frontage, so.
Right, but what I mean is even for, say, 70 feet in terms of frontage, you're looking at a narrow, deep lot. So the only way you're going to be able to fit,
Is to make it perpendicular. to
yeah,
this.
which would really be odd, I would think.
Well, in some respects, it may lessen the visual impact from the street, so maybe it's not as impactful from that
Beacon's View looks pretty bad
perspective.
from
Yeah.
the street.
On the scale, I mean, things built.
There's a
Yeah.
few.
On old posts, that's the way they did it.
and that side street.
I think we can find a lot of examples where things
Yeah.
might be turned perpendicular where it ultimately is beneficial.
Those two, multi.
But, everything has to be in appropriate scale. If the surrounding properties, like you mentioned, are
After you go
much
past.
smaller, it really does stand out.
Yeah, I know
Corner
it.
road on your right.
This is a corner lot. Yes, it has. frontage.
I think the corner lot, no issue.
Right, is it?
It's a back lot that really butts 95.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, corner lot certainly no issue, generally.
Yeah, and I looked earlier to see, because this has, now is it, a corner lot has 2 street frontage, corner lot, so, of the ones I saw in the Residence B zone of 15,000 square feet, I could only find 2 parcels, 2 lots that were like that. This one and one in Southport. So it's a small number. I guess I would be hopeful that if this works, it might be replicated and we may be able to look at lots that are 12,000 square feet. And maybe we don't do five units, but maybe 4. You get 3 plus the bonus, 2 plus the bonus 1 plus, 1 affordable. So,
So I need a motion for
I
that.
think we would need a motion to support it.
Can I make another comment? This is kind of a general one, but going back to the affordability, that a lot of people, myself included, when you hear 40 years, you think, God, that's forever, It'll never come to pass. But as you get older, like I have, you've seen developments go from not being built to being built and to be, the affordability expires and they become expensive condominiums. And I don't think Fairfield is ever going to be a bad community. So in 40 years, I'm just very confident that the affordability will be gone and it'll be market rate and expensive. And I think that we really should try to get in perpetuity for all the affordable housing if we're bending the regs in any way. So that's just my view.
I think you should trend that way too, and then there could be ways for those rights to be held in the land trust, which is where they would be. That's where they would be. Or 99 years, which is a pretty typical, another typical structure for land trusts.
Well, we can certainly suggest that in our letter, in support of the overall concept and that the commission might consider or should consider a longer term, such as a 99 years, so that we have it in perpetuity.
And to your point, Steve, there were quite a bunch of 40-year mortgages that were made, commercial and residential during the last cycle, so. So, I mean, shoot, there's notes that go that long, so it's not that long.
Steve, would you like to word a motion?
I thought we had a motion. You mean a different motion than this?
Well, there's no be amending this. Yeah, you would propose.
I think I understand if people are generally in support of that, what I understand the motion to be is in support, with a comment that, you know, we should consider a longer affordability term, 99 years. And perhaps, you know, this could be a model for considering other lots in the future or something like
That's
that.
very good.
Yeah.
So I think the motion is to support it and to authorize the chair to submit a letter in support to the Planning and Zoning Commission with those comments that have been made here. Does that sound about right?
Yep, I agree. That's good. Did you get that, Gretchen?
Well, we do have a recording, so.
Oh.
You can't hear all of it.
So you did mean 99 years.
Well, 99 is
A longer term.
long term. I meant perpetuity, but 99 is pretty close, you know?
I was giving them an out. I was a fan of perpetuity, but you know, 99 is another one that's commonly used.
I think some of the land leases that the town is giving her for 99.
It's a
Yeah.
thing. It's a thing.
Is there a second? Brian,
Yes.
first up. All in favor? Opposed? Anyone opposed?
I understand. I think that it's,
Too long.
yes.
Too long.
Yes.
Well, I think what we're
I
gonna
think
do
if
is we're gonna
we're-
suggest.
If we're saying that we're gonna have the, like, they're proposing that this is something that they wanna do. And if we say like, no, we want it in perpetuity, they could say then we're not doing it and we're gonna do something else, right? So we wanna give them the incentive to be able to build these affordable houses, right? For, you know, I think 40 years is a long time. I understand that 40 years does go by really fast. But I'd rather have something that is 40 years than nothing at all. So
That's a good
But again,
point.
I think the bonus unit is what he's already getting. He's already getting a bonus unit.
yeah, well,
Market
he's
rate.
getting a bonus unit, but it is a bonus unit that is affordable housing. So
No,
they
he's
are
getting
doing
two.
something.
He's getting another unit, so he's.
No, he's getting one.
One.
He's getting one unit and the affordable unit.
Correct, so he's getting a bonus unit. That's my point.
Pretty good.
So suppose we just said in perpetuity and left it at that.
Well, is,
I would be happier with that. Yeah. We could suggest in perpetuity.
Yeah.
TPZ is gonna do what they want
They
to
can
do.
do what they wanna do anyway.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, and certainly, John Fallon and, you know, the applicant will.
They know how to
Yeah,
argue,
comment.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. To be sure.
Okay, I can draft something and we'll make sure that everyone has a chance to make sure it accurately reflects.
What would the likelihood be if they were expecting 40 years and then you say 99 or perpetuity, what would the likelihood be that they would withdraw from your experience? Do you think that it would sway them or no?
Well, first of all, as Bob put it, we're advisory. The final say is planning and zoning. I think it would be natural to expect the Affordable Housing Committee as advocates for affordable housing to suggest a longer term or deeper affordability.
Right,
I do expect the developer to say,
right,
it doesn't work for me.
right.
And he'll articulate those arguments, or his counsel will, and planning and zone will make an informed decision then. So I think at the end of the day, he'll be grateful for the support of this body. I think
Right.
he'll understand.
Right,
that
I
we're
get,
gonna
I
push
get
for a
that, right,
longer
right,
affordability term. I'm not sure he would walk away from it.
okay.
And we use the term in perpetuity, I think, to mean at least 40 years. So I think in some ways, that's almost a little bit more ambivalent than 99 years. And that's one reason why I
Oh,
suggested that wording.
And, you know, this is different than your home. If you're investing in a 5-unit development,
Exactly.
40 years, you're gonna be retired, you're gonna be in Florida on the beach.
Hopefully.
And you don't care, you know, and I don't think it affects the economics at all. The mortgage is gonna be maybe a 20-year that rolls over or something like that.
It won't affect his financing for this team.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but I think to Nina's point, would they walk away and then
Well, I mean, ultimately,
because that's a really good
Yeah.
location, we
Let's see
don't
what-
want them to walk away.
if planning and zoning doesn't approve the text amendment,
Right.
then, you know, I think what he's more likely to do then is just build the duplex on a single family home.
Right, and we don't want that.
Well, I think it's a waste of limited resource. If, you know, land, we all know that land is incredibly expensive around here.
Right.
We've been talking about it. It's, as a result, it's very difficult to create affordable housing because of the underlying cost of land. So when you have a limited resource, I think you wanna use everything you can to make the most efficient use of it. Now, you know, to the point made earlier, it is a bit of a negotiation. You know, we did talk to the developer beforehand about deeper affordability. You know, he came back and said, that, you know, it doesn't work for us. So we didn't push that heavily, but, you know, that's what this body's here to do, which is to advocate for that. I don't think he's likely, he owns the property, he's gonna develop it.
Oh, okay.
It's not a contract purchase situation where he's gonna walk away and go someplace else, so there's something gonna get done here.
Would you, based on the definition of 30% and 80% of median income, would you consider that to be affordable or workforce?
It's closer to work, I mean, it's a term of art.
Yeah.
80%.
I think one thing you wanna, workforce housing can be anywhere between 60 and 120% AMI. So, you know, people that are, have incomes that are below 60% are working. So, you know, I would consider that workforce housing. So I think 80% probably is in that realm where it's a little bit, more like that, you know, we're good, talking about good incomes, it's just not enough to cover housing costs and other costs to live in this part of the country, so.
And one way to quantify it is to say, what's the present value today of the difference in rent? Between a 40-year living and a present.
Yeah, we're trying to take that approach with another development where we're trying to incent the investor, developer to do more affordability and try to offset the loss in income and the value to his asset through some other means, whether it's a tax abatement or something along those lines. You know, that's something you could look at, try to quantify the impact of that change and make it up somehow, or at least be cognizant of what that impact is. But yeah, I think to Bob's point earlier, it's a recommendation. And I don't, you know, to Janice's question, I don't, given the fact he owns the property, I think he's gonna develop it. It's just, we have an opportunity to do more than just a duplex and a single family. We need the housing, so,
Right.
all housing.
I think if you were quizzed by the Planning and Zoning Commission or staff, I mean.
I wanna have Steve there.
I'll go.
Okay, so the consensus of the committee, I think, is that we're in favor of that with your.
Well, we definitely are in favor. I
Yeah.
think, you know, there's split opinion in terms of the impact of the longer term.
You know, I would take it at 40 years if it was, that was all we had, you know. But I think you gotta go back and.
So it's a negotiation. If you say perpetuity and they say no way, you can't take 40 years.
No, but it's also about setting precedent. So if that's what you always lead with.
Okay, so are we finished with that?
I think we're good. I'll draft a letter. I'll make sure, again, share that with the committee. Hopefully it's reflective of the motion here. And sign it and submit it to them.
Oh, good. So next item we have is This is the allocation of the Housing Trust Fund to support purchase of the 5 duplex properties.
You recall-
Activity, right?
You recall at the last meeting, I said we're not quite ready for prime time on this one, and we're definitely not ready for prime time any longer. So we were working it back up. We have, there's an opportunity, 5 duplex properties went on the market, or are on the market. Will be on the market. We were working with a private investor who was looking to purchase them with our help, with the understanding that they would be deed restricted as affordable for a term, which is yet to be defined. To make a long story short, at the end of a long and arduous process, they backed out. It was not, it was difficult to pencil out, period, based on the underlying rents. So we have 10 units, 9 of which are occupied. So there's a relocation displacement issue with public dollars in. We have to consider the existing tenant base. That was a concern that we expressed. And there are certain laws that govern how we would approach that, and that has to be factored into the development budget. Their plan was to transition the property from basically naturally occurring affordable housing to Section 8 housing choice vouchers. Right now, with the Fairfield Housing Authority and the payment standard that they have in place, it's reflective of more reflective of housing costs more generally. So it can make or break these types of deals. But you obviously have to deal with the existing tenant base and figure out where they might go. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction you have to deal with. We just couldn't figure it out based on, again, the purchase price was $2.875 million for the 5 properties. You know, a little bit less than 600 per. So with the implosion of that deal, we still like, we're still trying to figure out how we might make this work. Not the town acquiring it per se. I mean, maybe if we had a housing trust, we could do that through that vehicle. But we've had conversations with the housing authority to see whether or not they had an appetite. They don't really like to do scattered site housing. But 3 of the properties are in close proximity to one another and could be part of a more extensive redevelopment opportunity down the road. All of these are non-conforming duplexes. They're side-by-side, single-story duplexes. They're not permitted in the zone, but they're non-conforming use. But you look around, there's plenty of properties that look just like it. And you know, there's certainly an easy expansion opportunity just to put a second story on it and turn a duplex into a 4-plex. Of course, you really can't intensify or enlarge a non-conforming use, so that would require probably some changes to our zone. So to make a long story short, we're still trying to kick this around a little bit. We do have to get back to the owner, let him know if we have any interest. We did tour the properties, pretty decent shape. Some are on good sized lots, and as I said, 3 are pretty close to each other that could present a really nice development opportunity. So we are talking to the housing authority. If they should pass, we will also reach out to a few other housing providers to see if there's any interest. So we are trying to see if there's any way to make this happen, but I don't think, you know, the town's not really in a position to buy the property. We certainly don't have enough money in our housing trust fund to buy the property. We don't own, operate, or manage housing ourselves. So we would prefer to work through an existing housing provider of one sort or another.
Would the owner consider breaking this up?
Well, I think that's where we're going with it. I mean, he's presenting it as a portfolio of 5 properties, but our interest is really in the 3.
So 2 are contiguous, right?
Two are contiguous and one's right around on the other side of the cul-de-sac, so, yeah.
So if we could,
Separated by one parcel in between, that we might be able to figure out a way in which we might acquire that as well.
So if we get the 3 and spin off the 2 and,
Well, I think if he's willing, we would make an offer on the 3 and leave the 2 for him to sell independently. I don't know if he's willing to do that. He's presenting as a portfolio of 5, but, you know, we haven't gone there yet. But I can tell you, based on our review, we're not as interested in the 2 that are kind of separate and apart from the other 3.
So since it's non-conforming, if he went and just did market rate, so the new person, they could keep it as a non-conforming duplex, and they could.
Yeah,
They
as
could
long as
make
you
it much bigger.
can't enlarge it, but you could keep it the same. We can't, you know, I suppose anything's possible. You could do 830G or some other thing to try to get around some of these. You could make your own.
I'm just saying the value of the lot at 600, what you're describing, given that you can't, there's limitations on what.
Well, we would have to do an
It's
appraisal.
great for what
We
we're.
would have to do an appraisal to support it. He provided his comps of other sales of other properties in the area. But we would do an appraisal if we were gonna go forward with this and base our offer on the fair market value as determined. by the
It just
appraisal.
seems a little off. Anyway.
It's high, but it's not completely out of the realm because there just isn't, there's very limited inventory, period. So anything that goes on the market right now in terms of a duplex or triplex is priced over what I think it should be, but it goes very quickly because there's not that many of them.
if we could get agreement of the neighbors, could this go through ZBA? And
Really, I don't think zoning, the ZBA can do that. I think more likely, you know, if we were working with the housing authority or some other nonprofit housing provider, I would take my chances with zoning and doing a text amendment to allow for that, provided, of course, the purpose here is to create affordable housing. So if you were putting a second story on an existing side-by-side duplex, it's really not gonna impact the neighborhood tremendously. It's consistent with what else you see there.
okay, so maybe like a Habitat would be a potential.
Well, Habitat does typically own ownership. So again, I'm not sure that
Connecticut Housing Partners?
that was my next call, yeah. Again, it's not really what they do either, but maybe they would be interested if there was an opportunity to do a more intensive redevelopment.
Yeah, that sounds.
Now, the question is, they can't get site control to all the parcels they need to do that. So, you know, you have to weigh that risk.
Not right now, but
Correct.
there's a affordable housing developer in Stanford, whose name I forget now. But
Garden Homes.
no. But they had they were sitting on cash and they were looking for properties. And
Well, if you come across the name,
I'll come across the name tonight, I'll send it to you.
yeah, we obviously would like to work with local, you know, groups like the Housing Authority. I did talk to Carla at Operation Hope, but I know that they don't really have the bandwidth right now to do anything since they're trying to, you know, secure their home for the next in perpetuity. So it's you know, after Carol, then, you know, I would probably, you know, have a person, but I thought of the Connecticut Housing Partners. Certainly talk to them.
okay.
So maybe at some point in the future, it'll come back to you. We'll take it off the agenda for now. The next one, I
Can we go
think,
back to the
No,
first
sir.
one for a second?
we're back on that one again.
Yeah, so this is a lot where you could have 3 units. And if they give us one that's affordable, we'll give them another one, so that's 5.
Right.
So why wouldn't that not work in a zone where you can do 2 units? If you give us one affordable, we'll give you another one, so then you've got 4.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
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 And maybe even if it's a single family.
So, I mean, I think I don't wanna confuse the commission, in terms of what's before them, in terms of this particular application that applies to a 15,000 square foot lot in residence B zone. But I think if the model works, why couldn't we look at smaller lots or lots in in a different zone? To do exactly that, we'll give you a bonus unit if you create one more, an affordable unit if we'll give you a bonus on top of that.
And we have,
Or EDU.
to that end, let's say we 12, per se, 4 units, between 12 and 15,000. These are just single family lots using the most recent database that we got from Ross Murray, the assessor. There are I count 88 between 12 and 15. And if you went to everything that's currently treated as residential, then it's a bit higher than that. It's probably another 20 or 25 top of that. So I mean, that would be a direction we could potentially take, is instead of 3 + 2, might be
2 + 2.
2 + 2 or something like that.
So number 6 is we had received a presentation at the last meeting regarding proposed mixed-use development, 4-story mixed-use development, 40 units at 2179 Post Road. The architect was Mark Andre, and John Fallon was also representing them. I think what was interesting, to us was the fact that he was volunteering a 20% affordability provision, which is certainly nice. Section of the Post Road that would seem appropriate for the type of development he's proposing. But I know that the committee wanted to take some additional time to look over the plans and maybe take a look at the site. And, so that's why we're here tonight. But again, I think they would appreciate a letter in support of their application to planning and zoning when they file that.
This is a cigarette store, that location.
No, it's next to the cigar.
Right next.
It's next to the
Sorry.
cigar, it's vacant
Yeah,
property.
yeah.
It's next to it, yeah. So it's a corner lot.
But it includes a cigar store, doesn't it?
No,
Wow.
So-
no, it's just that, it's next to it. It's the parcel.
He's wrapping around.
Yeah.
It doesn't include it. I'm looking at it, it doesn't include it.
It's Bruce, owned both those lots.
Yeah.
It's sold in one.
I think so. Well, again, this is a contract to purchase, so.
He's proposing a public park or sitting area or something.
He's trying to
Lot of
create,
amenities, you know,
he's trying to
lot of-
create a public space, in the front, so create more visual appeal for the development center.
Community is what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
With the amenities.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice.
It's an attractive proposal, and the commission was really favorable in January.
Yeah, they had
They had a
informal
pre-application.
pre-application, which,
And they really liked it.
He was talking 30% affordable at the time, but still 20%, it's
Well, I think they liked it, not just for
very,
that, though. I
very
think
good. No, I think they
Yeah,
got
The
it.
design was.
Right, it was a nice design.
And center, design.
No
district,
kennel involved.
COD, so. I think it's.
Support
The good one.
Okay, I was second.
Any
We can still
discussion?
discuss it, but-
Any
One
discussion?
quick question in this regards, the affordable, how many years do they want to keep their apartments in the?
typically, our inclusionary zoning requirements require a 40-year restriction.
Could you reasonably allow 4 years here, but not 4 years for the other one?
Well, I think the commission or this body has in the past suggested, maybe a longer term affordability. There's nothing wrong with us suggesting that to be consistent with our approach with the item that we discussed previously. Whether or not, they can do it, again, I think that's expressing a desire. I don't know that it would to your point, I don't know that we're necessarily saying that it has to happen in order for a project to receive our support,
Yeah,
but.
they're not asking for anything really, right? They're not bending the rules or anything. They're gonna give 20% affordable on their own.
On their own, exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
this
you
is,
can.
this is a
Yeah.
gift, really, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quid pro quo like on some of the other.
Is there a statewide no on the period?
On the period
Yeah.
term, it's 40 years. The 40 years comes from 830G, Connecticut General Statute. So if you want to, I mean, you could go longer, but it's not less than 40 years. We haven't had much success outside of the town or, a housing authority or some other entity to require a longer term because, why would you necessarily? But I do think that home ownership in particular, we've talked about that for a couple projects where it really does create some unusual situations. If you happen to be the person with the gold ticket at the end of the 40-year restriction, you purchased the unit at a substantial discount, and now you can turn around and sell for, market value. That's
And this is where,
that doesn't strike me as very fair, but that's.
and one of the objectives of our affordable housing plan of 2022 was to deepen, the deed restriction.
Yeah.
pool.
If it's orthogonal to everything else that's done, you might get.
I think your point is well taken. If we're gonna make a comment on the one, we would like to see something longer term. We may want to be consistent and make the same comment here.
I think we can encourage it here. I mean, I don't think we want to do anything to discourage.
I understand. I don't think we want to discourage the other one either, but.
Well, but when they presented, the reason they said they were making it as a full is because they wanted to be presence in town of Fairfield, because it's the way it was when they were here. Like, if you believe the show that was put on, which, there's no reason not to, I don't think they'd have a problem making the term longer, right? Unless.
We can certainly have that conversation. My question is whether or not he can make the numbers work at 20%.
I know, I thought about that too.
Because, other projects we're not seeing those pencil out, so.
But if they could make it work, then we should capture the economics and talk to other developers. When they say, no, they can't do it, we could say, well,
Well,
this guy could do it, why couldn't you?
I think some of his,
ultimately, the proof's in the pudding. If he's able to do it, and build it at 20% without any level of subsidy, that's proof enough for me, so.
Singles, right?
So we have a motion, we have a second. We've suggested that Mark might make mention also that we would encourage.
We would love an affordability term longer than 40 years.
Yes. Any more discussion? All in favor? I think it's unanimous. Great.
Well, okay, we went through all those goodies, so clean up our list. I don't have anything new to report on inclusionary zoning. Our time has been preoccupied with a few of these little deals cooking around, trying to figure out if we can make them happen. But I do feel now hopeful, I think we'll get to that later in the agenda regarding planning and zoning taking a step forward in terms of getting the POC closer to final, to a public hearing. And with that, I think then we have an opportunity to hopefully have a conversation with our counterparts there on some of these items that we've been talking about. All three of these. I guess the middle housing piece insofar as the first item we talked about today is kind of in that realm. But certainly the inclusionary zoning we've talked about, lowering the threshold from 10 to 5 essentially. We talked about increasing the affordable set aside from 10 to 12, 15% overall, and potentially a portion of that being more deeply targeted to households at or below 60 versus the current 80. So all three of those are in play. It is a tough environment based on, it's a different world from a financing standpoint a little bit right now, so it's dealing with that on a couple other issues, but I think we've talked about whether or not it's better to have the conversation to incentivize people to do more than what's the minimum required, or maybe fill a gap if you set the benchmark too high and it doesn't quite pencil out. As long as you keep at the table, maybe you can fill the gap another way. So that's it on that. I know we've done most of the analysis with our neighboring communities, but we still need to fill in a few gaps.
Right. No, there is a placeholder in the document. I'm not sure, I think it.
In the POCD, yeah, it just generally hints at it, right?
Well, it actually, I think it cites 12%, Bob, you might have it handier than I do. The POCD.
We're higher, I think it says 12% or higher, we're higher.
Yeah. But again, that, they're gonna rework that draft, so.
They are, but I suspect that Emmeline may be coming to you because, as I mentioned last time, she did specifically tell the group that, look for a recommendation from the Affordable Housing Committee. So she may be coming to us sooner rather than later, but we should at least be ready to respond to the draft. And they did meet and talk about the POCD the other night, last night, as a matter of fact, for an extended period of time. And at the end of the meeting, my takeaway was from the chair that the plan was a draft is coming. The committee will then, this commission will then react to the draft. There'll be a public hearing. Once they have a draft they're comfortable with, they'll review the feedback at the public hearing, and then they'll decide whether they need to have another public hearing after they make, revisions. So if the revisions are modest, maybe they can go and finish up. If they get substantial feedback at the meeting, then another public hearing is probably happening.
It sounded so much more hopeful when I said it. No, it sounds impressive.
Well, I just think we want to be prepared for what might be coming down the pipe.
You have another 2 years. The POCD is not due till February 26th.
But I think we're.
40 years goes by fast. November.
Other than the fact that we haven't done a comprehensive zoning update in 3 decades, but aside from that, everything's great.
Parallel work.
Yeah. But, we really need to do the POCD. The last time we did a substantive update of the POCD is probably 20 years ago. 2000 POCD was probably the last substantive update. The other ones were all statistical or minor tweaks to incorporate TOD and some other things along the way. So I think it's long overdue.
So there will be a draft coming, but when that draft is coming, I think it's going to be a little while. I would be really surprised if the public hearing is announced before
September.
Well, I was going to say our next meeting, but I guess that's a slam dunk.
We're not. Yeah, I think we have time to consider these items before they get to
So maybe
anywhere close to the public.
So maybe for our August meeting, we should be have our ducks together, or maybe September, but it's coming, but not tomorrow.
The parking piece, and I must again acknowledge Bob's good work. I was a panelist on a Connecticut Main Street program about parking, and I used the Affordable Housing Committee Bob's summary as an example of the work we've been doing here to look at our parking regulations in a different light. And about the same time, we also were dealing with yet again another application for a variance for a new restaurant downtown that needs a variance like every other restaurant downtown. So I did provide a letter in support, and in that letter, I also said that we've done this, you know, the Affordable Housing Committee has done this work, and that came to the attention of the property owner, whose name you probably all well know, but since he owns a lot of property here, I did share the report with him, which he found very interesting. So I think one of the steps we talked about was doing targeted outreach to some of the select property owners whose properties we were looking at, and he certainly fits that category. So I think, you know, that would be something, you know, that we might want to do in the next month or so as well, to kind of build some more support for this, once we have the opportunity to present, you know, make a text amendment application.
He's not the same as the owner of Aldi's.
He's not, he's not,
Something on.
he's not, but I will talk to
You've
him.
had conversations. with
I've
that.
talked to him, and I've talked to the owner of the Bob's Plaza as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
Yes.
anything else?
I think we've covered no, I think that's really it. So I think we just need to keep working these three areas and try to be ready and just monitor what's going on. At POCD.
Yep. I have a couple things when you get to it.
What do you get?
On POCD?
No, just other stuff. Before we post anything.
Oh, I didn't get it, we're only at 8.
Yeah, we're on that. We're on that. That's
Motivation.
You gotta wait for 9.
These questions. We are about the same place we were last month with regard to pending set-aside developments. There's a couple that are kicking around at various levels. One before inland wetlands involves a 27-unit set-aside development on Stilson, Road 222 Stilson, which is off Black Rock, between Black Rock Turnpike and the plaza there. There's a condo development in that area as well. But that's before inland wetlands, and a couple others have been discussed at Water Pollution Control Authority. In terms of the projects currently under construction, I believe we are close to getting a CO on Black Rock, 528 Black Rock Turnpike, as well as the one on Park Avenue, which we expect, you know, in July. And the one on Park Avenue is the one that will kind of pushes over the top. So Tom Ivers has been doing a lot of work in my office to put the finishing touches on the application. And we're, you know, pretty much, you know, got a big thick binder, so we're in pretty good shape. So we're just waiting for the COs and declaration of covenants to be filed. And then we'll put the last finishing touches on it and submit it in July.
So we got this, they got the CO then for the apartments on Park Ave?
They have not yet. We're anticipating that, yeah. They just reached out recently to start their talk about pre-leasing. So they're getting close.
So you expect that one in July?
I expect that in July. As soon as we get the CO on that, we will file.
And 528 Black Rock Turnpike, we said that was close. What does that mean?
They've been at the same spot for a while. They've been doing pre-leasing, but I haven't seen the CO issued. I was told by the agent that they're ready for a CO. And then I sent a note over to Planning and Zoning asking if they had filed the declaration of covenants yet, because I hadn't seen a copy. But before Planning and Zoning signs off on it, they need to submit that and record on the land records. They haven't already done so.
So I went by the Park Avenue one last week.
Yep.
And first of all, you can barely see it, you know, it's
Talk about perpendicular.
at least it's hidden now. I don't know, in the winter time, maybe when the leaves are down. But I can't figure out who would want to live there if you're not a student. Because there's no amenities around. And you're right next to the college. It'd be good for college students, but
Well, employees perhaps. Our employees, I don't know.
maybe.
Well,
Right off the
I don't think there'll be any issue with the affordable units based on the calls that I get every day. I don't care where they are, they're gonna fill up real fast. It's just, I wish we could.
Yeah, the demand is insatiable.
The stories I hear are just sad.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping there's a couple people I'm got my fingers crossed for that won't be able to find one of these units and apartments in there. So. Housing trust fund, we have, a balance of $825,655. And the good news is that's, we don't have any dollars committed. So we did close on 376
Oh.
Quincy.
We did close.
We did
Excellent.
close.
Yeah.
Cool. This past week.
Mhm.
So I forked over the last remaining $244,000. So we bought it for 273.
Wow, that's lower than we thought, right?
Yeah, we had a higher reserve, so that went back
So
in the
what are
kitty.
we doing with it exactly?
What are we doing with it? Well, right now, it's currently occupied by the former owner,
Right,
who has no place to go. And is on a fixed income, and his wife is in, rehab,
Oh,
because she
right.
just had or not his wife, his mom. He lives with his elderly mom, who had a stroke. So, part of it is to try to find them housing someplace else.
Can
But
they get, can you go to Carroll and could they get a preference because they're
Right.
part of a relocation of a renovation?
we're certainly talking to Carol about every other day now, so, yeah, I think the long-term plan for Parkview is, as you recall, we now have 5 properties. We have, 3 of which are contiguous to one another, and 2 are across the street that are not contiguous to one another. So the 2 across the street are conforming duplex building lots. And our thought, especially with the Habitat model, is they can, as soon as they're ready, as soon as we give them site control, ground lease, that's been approved by the boards, they can come in with a building permit and start building a new duplex at the correct flood elevation. So that would be phase 1. Phase 2, we have 3 single-family homes that we're trying to aggregate, and what we like to do is replace them with cluster type development that would provide more than, something closer to 2 or 3 to 1 replacement, but a different configuration than what's presently there. That will require planning and zoning review. So that's probably a second phase. And so that will give us time to find suitable accommodations for our current holdover occupants, tenants, of which we have 2. So, as much as I don't want to be a landlord, I am a landlord.
You keep fighting it.
So, yeah, that's the plan. And so I think the next step, now that we have possession of 376 Quincy, would be to finalize a ground lease and get that reviewed and approved by the Board of Selectmen, RTM, and Planning and Zoning, and then allow Habitat to go from Greenfield to Parkview. And
So when's the last time you had a discussion with the state to see if they wanted to be reasonable now and give some money to help?
We've had conversations with the state ongoing, and I don't think their position has really changed. In fact, I'm constantly amazed that for groups that says you want to build housing and communities like Fairfield, they figure out all kinds of ways in which they can't make it work. I think there'll be other opportunities to work with the state. I mean, Bureau Street potentially is more a conventional development if we did something on these scattered sites where there's actually a development opportunity, that might be more consistent with their portfolio. You know, they kind of have programs, they sit within those parameters. They don't have as much, they don't want a wheel and deal, you know, like they don't have a lot of flexibility sometimes, as much as they'd like. That's where we're on
What
at
did the red house on Reef Road, what did that sell for?
1.3.
Wow. It's a big lot, now that they've cleaned up all the.
Yeah, they owed a lot, they owed a lot taxes to the town, and
It's terrible.
we worked with the occupants for a long time, with social services, to try to keep them housed. Kind of the linchpin was they both had medical conditions that required them for extended rehab at Carrollton, and it was obvious that they couldn't live independently any longer. So at that point, we were able to get a conservator appointed, and I did do an appraisal. I said we would be very interested in acquiring the property, so I made my little offer. They said thanks, but you know, we think we could probably do better. And they in fact did do better, a lot better. But you know, that's just, so you can build a duplex on it, but if your land cost is $650 per unit, there's just no way you can make that work on unaffordable.
Are they gonna build 2 single-family houses?
I'm sure they're gonna build 2, probably the side by side, you know,
Yeah,
condo
two
type
condo.
thing, you know. And there'll be a couple $1 million, and it's a very nice area. And they could absorb, you know, $650,000 in land costs if you're selling it for 2.5 million, but can't do that if you're turning around trying to sell for 200. Doesn't really. I'm no math major, but I can tell right now.
That shows you what a good deal you got though in Parkview Commons.
It's decent, but you know, again, and we're trying to be fair to we're giving them as much as we can under the formula.
Mhm.
But still, when you're buying property at 300 and you're doing duplexes, your land cost is 150. That's a lot. Usually developers are looking, you know, 50 or lower, right?
Really?
So it's hard to make that's the problem that we have trying to do small density missing middle housing. Cause the cost of acquiring the property just doesn't underwrite very well. So we're gonna get to that. So Parkview, as I said, we did 376, 244 Greenfield Streets moving ahead. The news there is that we were approached by the abutting property owner who's indicated a desire to talk to us about possibly acquiring his property. So I have an appraisal underway. So
We
She's
also
confirmed.
want to tack on some of the.
yeah, it really only works if we,
Yeah.
you know, what we did when we went to Parks and Rec is just draw a line straight across. And so it only works if you can add the town property, which is the only reason we were interested in that in the first place.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like twice the size of the other one, but they're still non-conforming, they're small by comparison.
It's one right to the left as you face it, Greenfield
Yes,
Hill.
yes, that little.
The one you identified as
We
being,
identified
yeah.
it, yeah.
What is that address?
I have it.
That's the difference one. Yeah, 250.
I was trying not to use the address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Here,
Mark,
this one.
did we ever do an analysis of other kind of odd little housing lots next to parks? Where if we were to get 2,000 square feet from the parkland, we'd have actually a pretty good lot? you know?
Sounds like something right up your alley, Steve.
So
No, there are, I think we had an intern look at a couple of different opportunities. I'm not sure that turned up any. There was 1 or 2 that were promising,
Mhm.
but we haven't really been acted on any of that.
Thanks.
So, yeah, I'll get back to you, but we said, of course, we're interested in talking to you and we'll do an appraisal, and get back to you. And St. Emery School is the same, where, I think Carol is still moving ahead, she's now afraid of buying that property. We talked about the POCD. So, that's it for old business, unless somebody has anything.
We've covered P O C D, I think, sufficiently.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anything else for old business before we move on to new business items? New business, we did want to update on last night's visit to Pine Tree.
Yeah. Go ahead, I wasn't.
You there first?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had a great visit last night. Steve and Brian and Gretchen and I were there, and I thought I might reach out to Steve or Brian or Gretchen to kind of give an overview of how it went.
It was, I think there was RTM there as well, right? That's.
Yeah, exactly.
For selectmen.
And for selectmen and for
The fact that
RTM.
Bill Gerber was there was huge, I think.
Yeah.
So they, yes, they got to see, we got to see a unit, and we got to sit in their main area, and then Carol gave us a 5-minute speech on why affordable housing is important and how hard it is to do, which we're all very, we're all very sympathetic. Yeah, we know those numbers. I learned that I didn't realize she was using LIHTC all over the place, which was news to me. I'm curious where she got those credits, and yeah, I guess they're all competitive too, so she must have a track record, because
She's not getting the 9%, she's typically
She's doing the 4%.
4%.
I was gonna say, I mean,
I wish, she probably wishes she got 9%. Yeah.
Because we get a 4% tax credit if we used town bond money. Not state bond, but town bond.
Do what?
Well, the 4% comes with the state bond money.
Okay.
Would the 4% come with a town bond money?
I don't know that
Because you have to compete for the state bond money.
Yeah.
The town bond money, town can do it once, you know.
Well, those are different animals. I mean, you're talking about the town issuing debt to fund those things, and
Yeah, 40
we're not
years,
selling them off as, to equity investors. I don't think we can do that. It's general
Why not?
obligation debt. I don't think that's what we can do.
I don't see why not.
Well, I don't know why you would do it. You don't necessarily need to. She raised enough equity through the LIHTC dollars typically to do her projects.
You want to streamline the process, and so you want to have like an assembly line that the town can bond it, we get the 4%. Everybody knows both the dollars and the timing,
Okay.
because right now, there's no timing. You have to win.
Well, it's true. They only do it at certain times a year. Yeah.
And you compete against 68 other towns.
Well, the 9% you definitely.
Yeah.
Or
I thought on the 4.
4% is as of right. So.
If you get the bond money.
I did think it was very interesting, the 4 people from the RTM and Bill Gerber really did not know very much about the need, type of, anything. I mean, it was astonishing,
Oh, yeah, that was the big takeaway.
which is why I think we need,
Well, they said
you
the
all need
education-
to
I think
do-
the education piece. Yeah.
you've got to get more people in to see it and to hear about it.
We do, and I don't know whether, I know Liz Zezima was at that meeting in February when Mark and I got a lot of time before them in February.
Yeah,
To
but
give the annual report, but they were asking some pretty basic questions.
they really were.
And they obviously think it's very important that there be more public education or
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not just the RTM needs to be educated, it's really a public.
absolutely. And I mentioned the survey that we did. We got 1,500
Yeah,
responses
yeah.
before the affordable housing plan was done. And I think that's kind of information we might want to share with some of the really interested members who were there last night. I was disappointed we didn't have more RTM
Well,
members there.
I didn't find out till Friday that the town website had been a problem. So the invitation did not go out when it should have. So people didn't find out about it till Friday afternoon when they finally sent it out again. So that was a big problem, I think. Were you aware, Mark, that I mean, Marcy said that the RTM didn't even get the budget, didn't come through. There was
I think it,
something going
I go on the
I
website.
didn't have any
and pull it
with
out.
the
So-
email.
Well, I mean, I mentioned it to Mark last week, but we didn't talk.
Yeah.
You weren't
But
invited,
there
the
was-
housing committee wasn't initially invited, you guys.
No,
talked-
it was the RTM.
RTM initially, we were kind of an add-on through Gretchen's intervention.
But they just didn't get it to get, to even see it. I mean, it was a very nice flyer and
Yeah.
should have been intriguing
Thursday
enough.
was herbs.
At least we got 4 who were very interested. And Bill,
We did, and we know that, I mean, two of the people that have been coming to our meetings certainly share an avid interest. They came to the last 2 meetings. So, and certainly there are others, and I think we should take Carol up on her offer to do another session like this, but, and to, to get the members, our members who couldn't be there last night to potentially go, but also the other 36 RTM members.
yeah,
Hopefully
Yeah.
a preponderance of those can.
yeah,
can go as
especially
well.
from the districts that don't have any
Well, you
affordable
could,
housing.
Yeah, or you could do something at McKinley that would hold more people and then have them.
But they need to see a unit.
Yeah, I think
And
nothing's.
they need to see what that complex looks like.
Right. That's why I said McKinley, because you're.
You're right there, yeah. But I mean, to me, that's critical because I am appalled at the number of people, I mentioned Pine Tree too, and they have no idea what it is, where it is. You'd think it was on Mars.
Absolutely. But Carol did a great job and Carol
Carol
Lansman
Lansman.
was very gracious and she was
Yeah.
really very, very good as well.
And they
Just
have a
a-
wonderful
board
plate, big platter. Oh, good. Things to eat, they had bottles.
So I guess we should be invited
That's
up there
nice.
so I can eat their cookies left over.
Exactly.
Better than cookies, actually.
Yeah, it really was.
Steve, I had little water.
Dinner.
Little waters, but I was, they did a great job and Carol was very painstaking in terms of explaining what the issues were, the history behind Pine Tree, some of the issues associated with affordable housing,
Yeah,
the risk associated, the uncertainty that she lives with in terms of making these developments happen and ask us all to become advocates, so.
And we talked about the community land trust.
Mhm.
Carol, you and me, we get together. You. Well, I don't know, whatever your calendar works, because, and the first selectman was listening to the conversation, he's supportive of, it's just really, it's a legal structure, right? It's kind of just moving chairs around, deck chairs around on that.
but he stayed there. I mean, the rest of us, I think Steve and I were maybe the last 2 to leave, and he was still there talking to Carol. So I think that's very
Well,
good.
that's real.
Yeah, that's what I said, yeah, yes.
The shocking number of mailed applications.
Oh, yeah.
That she had, that they received. And this had to, this is, none of this could be done by electronic.
Computer.
Had to be,
It had to be a
Yeah.
stamped envelope submitted to the housing authority. And did you say they got 4,000
Was about 4,300. This was for opening,
for 30
the
days
list.
in March?
and there were 90 spots, and what they do is it's a lottery. But they got the 4,300, out of the 4,300, they chose, the lower number to give. I mean, all you're in is a lottery. You have no idea, you could still be waiting 3 or 4 years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we've seen similar stuff in Bridgeport.
Need more vouchers.
In the meeting,
Well, they keep trying, and I think it's amazing, but what they do, but.
the meeting we had with her for another group I'm in the week before, she talked about being really close, she thought, on High Street. She thought that the legal decision was coming down
It's supposed to
soon.
come down.
Yeah, and that she
But-
felt she had a good place with it.
That's been going on, as she said, they bought that
I
property.
mean, that was a very good conversation.
2018,
2018, they're carrying it only because she can carry it with the Westport,
yeah,
profit money.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what bank is giving you
yeah, no,
3 1-year extensions on a 2-year temp construction loan?
but I did ask her to give a history of it, because when she came in, buildings that were there, as I say, they looked like concrete bunkers. Do you remember?
I do, yeah.
Well, there's some that are right across the street still, those brick. They were sort of-
No, but these were even worse than that. These were kind of cement colored, I mean, they were,
I mean, I remember.
Predecessor to town, Fire Trade.
They were-
Units one.
Run through there.
just, I wonder if anybody's got any
Was that
pictures.
company housing, those little brick?
Yeah,
Two-family?
well, the only public housing we have here is trefoil and pine tree.
No, I meant the little the one-story brick two-family
No,
houses.
those are the ones we're kind of
Well,
talking about.
there's so many of them, yeah.
They're privately owned. A lot of investors up there, rental housing. Some affordable, some not.
But the reason they were built, I think maybe it was back, we're thinking like post-war.
That's post-war workforce housing.
Yeah.
So she has 50 units at Pine Tree and 30 units at Trefoil.
Right.
And the other 10 that she oversees are what?
That's
Villa.
Senior.
That's
Yeah.
Greenfield
Greenfield Commons.
Yeah. So she acquired that from mutual housing.
And she's
Senior housing.
applying
Yes, it is.
for the
Strictly.
adjustment of the-
Nice, yeah, nice looking place.
What's nice about Pine Tree is there are a few families, so not everybody is elderly. There's
Right, it's a
life going
mix.
on, you know?
So,
Which I think is
a couple of things.
important.
One, under new business, I did get an email today from attorney Chris Russo,
Why I like.
who is proposing
Which is our card rates.
a text amendment to
Your two.
provide an option for off-site affordable housing as an option. So you recall we talked about that before, whether you create an on-site as part of the development, you have an off-site option for payment in lieu. And he's put together a text amendment. The last time we had considered this, we actually had a deal pending. We're gonna do a 5-for-2 swap. We had one condo in Southport, and a 4-family off the Kings Highway area. And there was a proposed swap to allow, us to do the 5 units in lieu of creating the 2 units on site. Which fell apart partly because
The guy was a crook.
aside from the guy, I won't say that, but aside from issues with regard to the gentleman who was developing it, the big issue, I think, for planning and zoning was that they wanted the units off-site to be in the same general vicinity as so the development was occurring in Southport. We had 1 unit in Southport, the other one on the eastern side of Fairfield. They wanted all the units to be in Southport. So this recognizes that concern, this proposed text amendment. He wants to appear before the Affordable Housing Committee, explain his thought process, but generally what he's trying to do is give the commission at its discretion the option to allow for satisfy an affordable housing requirement by creating units off-site within the same general geographic vicinity, so by planning district. So anyway, he asked if he could have time at our next meeting. I said I would bring it up to the commission, and I assume that you guys always like to hear from folks, and
Are you
so I
gonna
will send an
circulate that?
invitation. I will do that, yes. And then the other thing I did want to mention is that we, as you know, we did get technical assistance capacity building grant, if you will. It's really, they're providing technical assistance to us. It's not like they're giving us money. But we were one of 4 communities selected, received this. We had asked, it involves Herb and myself, as well as planning and zoning and the first selectman, talk about how we might create more opportunities for middle housing. And because we're struggling, I said, it's just the economics don't work at this level. So if they have any ideas, and we're certainly willing to exchange ideas with our peers in Connecticut. But I know from talking to our counterparts, that we're not to our own horn too much, but we're, leaps and bounds ahead of most communities in the state. So what I ask for is, it'd be helpful if you shared some best practices, maybe from some other parts of the country that are also high cost areas and wrestling with the same exact issues and might be able to shed some light on this. So, whether that's California or Colorado or Massachusetts, some of those areas have the same exact issues. And hopefully they'll have some solutions that they can share with us. But the other communities are Shelton, Ridgefield, and do you remember
Danbury, I think.
Danbury.
And then there was going to be another one that sounded like it was going to be some sort of a grouping of towns that had similar needs, or maybe towns that have virtually no affordable housing or at all right now, but we didn't get any detail on that one.
West
Somebody
Hartford.
mentioned last night, yeah.
Yeah, well, West Hartford does have, they have a different approach, but they're making some good headway on some of that stuff. And part of it starts with, as we've talked about before, many communities have a lot more in terms of public housing stock than we do. So if you look at the inventory, assisted housing makes up a significant percentage of their affordable housing inventory. In Fairfield, it's quite limited.
Yeah,
So all of ours is basically through our efforts to deep restrict properties, which is really kind of hard.
that goes back to the public housing authorities, right?
Right.
Some of the municipalities, when they did it, they put up, but a lot of that we know from, a lot of that's in disrepair though. A lot of these municipalities, they built them, but then they're falling apart and they can't operate them. So it's an interesting thing. But but you've already got the land. You already have, you can fix something up. It's a lot easier than acquiring and building.
I was gonna say, just following up on the visit with Carol, I think it would be good for us to sort of rejuvenate that effort we had talked about to do more public education, do more connectivity. We had that really great visit with the RTM, but maybe we could meet with the Board of Selectmen, maybe we could do a session at the BOE or someplace, like a housing seminar of some sort, but some way to better educate the public, the wider public, in terms of what the issues are and, the challenges that people are facing.
Even with all those great numbers.
Sorry, Brian?
Even with all the great numbers. Cause I think
Yeah, I think we got a great story. But thoughts on that?
What about the first selectman's newsletter? Like a blurb or gauge?
That's a good idea. It goes out every month or
I don't
every
know
week.
if it's
every week, every
Or is it
Friday.
every
other week, maybe?
Every Friday.
Every Friday, right? I mean, yeah, and there's a lot of information and you.
It is, but there's so much information that,
Right.
I mean, when we put
Lost in
age-friendly,
the weeds there.
age-friendly information just has gotten lost in the weeds repeatedly there, and,
An open house or an
I
education
still
session.
think you need to see what.
I mean,
I agree.
And you need maybe to get a neighbor or two who comes in, because as Carol said, they had terrible reaction when they first proposed this. Oh, it's going to decrease our property values, and they're all thrilled to death with it because it's a great.
I don't see how they could think it was gonna decrease the price, but
Well,
anyway.
because that's the
I
myth.
mean, I was.
Yeah, but from the way it already looked, I'm like, how could we make this
Because
worse?
they haven't seen it.
I mean, I found the results.
It's true, it was, I'm like,
Yeah.
I go, it's not like, I don't know what you're
But there
thinking.
is that myth all over the country. that
Oh, I know,
that's
the parking.
Well, I mean, the results of their survey, I found the results of our survey somewhat troubling.
Yeah,
I have to say.
absolutely.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
So we could certainly advertise it in the first selectman's newsletter too. I mean, I think we should do that, Janice. But I think we need to have something on the ground.
Yeah, a little.
Brian said. And
Else kind of a thing.
certainly not try to do it during the summer, but maybe try to tackle something like that in the
Be
fall.
sure that the emails is working. I've got a couple thoughts, but I'll give them to you later.
Okay. So I know we've got a lot going on, but you know, and we will look for you to do all the work there, Mark. We can put you in. We have some experience. Bob's got some experience in terms of.
As long as it has a pivot table, I'm turning to you. So.
When my church first started getting interested in the topic, we did a Zoom education. Actually, Mark spoke at it. So we had about 50 people, not maybe half for church members. So there was members of the public came to find out, what is AMI? What does this mean? How many do we have? Where are they located?
That's great.
So we gave all that information. God, I was shocked at the number of people who.
We had 90 people at the Board of Ed. It was the summer of 2018. We had developers there and it was great session. So I think if we work hard enough in publicizing it, we could have something.
Yeah, I think people are interested. They don't understand it.
Well, we also have to have developers. There's so much clever civil engineering technologies these days to build stuff that's really neat, at very competitive prices. And I thought in New York Times about ModX.
Is that the one that you?
Which one?
ModX, Ivan Rupnik. And it's just a consortium of entities that are trying to build housing at much lower costs than.
Yeah,
You can.
Southern California.
The construction, I mean, there was an article in the New York Times recently about modular construction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's helpful, but still, it's the cost of land.
Yeah, there is a cost of land.
That's probably the biggest impediment.
I think we should float them. Put it out in the
Well,
sound.
Yeah,
Out in California. I had.
And I think too, we should revisit the issue of town-owned land and. I mean, it's not an easy thing. You know, Steve and I took a look at it a couple of years ago. And, you know, some of it is definitely water prone. A number of the pieces of the parcels have other purposes, but properties can be repurposed. And I mean, there probably are some possibilities down there. They aren't turnkey. They wouldn't be easy, but they could have some long-term potential, I think. Anyway. Anything else for tonight? Anyone?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Don't need to ask.